Hi everyone and welcome to this week's book review. So this week I'm going to be looking at The Ickabog by J.K. Rowling. So this is her new children's book and she brought it out during lockdown for the children to cheer them up, and one chapter of the book was published each day. I thought I'd do this now because we're all in need of a bit of cheering up, and it's a really good, just nice traditional fairy tale story. I would normally show you the cover of the book right now and some of the illustrations inside because they're great, but I'm afraid I got it out the library and they needed it back because there was a massive waiting list. So I'm afraid I don't have the actual book with me today, but I'll still talk about it, and hopefully a lot of you will go out and either borrow it from the library or buy it because it is a really good book. So, The Ickabog is actually the first children's book J.K. Rowling has brought out since the success of Harry Potter. So she decided for a while that she wasn't going to look at children's things again because she'd done Harry Potter and thought she wanted to do something different. So she ended up going into adult writing and brought out the successful crime series, the Cormoran Strike series, which was made into the TV series as well. And she wrote this under the pen name Robert Galbraith. Now, I think it just shows how good a writer she is, because for ages people didn't realise it was actually her, and the series became popular in its own right under Robert Galbraith's name before people even realised it was her. So I think it just shows how good a writer she actually is. So once she'd done about 5 in the series, I think, so far, she decided to revisit the Ickabog, which she actually wrote like a long time ago. She wrote it while she was writing the Harry Potter series, and she used to read it to her children when they were young, but decided that she would put it up in the loft, and it's been up there for a long time. So during lockdown, a lot of us have been digging at old projects, and J.K. Rowling was the same. She decided to take it out of the loft and decided she was going to work on it, and released one chapter of the story every day during lockdown 1 I think it was, for children, so that they've got something nice to look forward to and enjoy. And at the same time she ran a competition for children to actually illustrate different points of the book. So throughout the book, which I wish I had here to show you, there's actually great illustrations from different children of all ages from all over the world. So there's ones from India and I think Sri Lanka, England, Australia, all over, who've illustrated different sections of the book, and it really looks like a traditional Victorian fairy tale, just with the big colour plate illustrations, and some of the kids' illustrations are absolutely fab. I'm envious of their talent. Like, some of the drawings are absolutely brilliant, and it really adds to the story and just makes it so much more enjoyable to read. So the book's pretty much a classic fairy tale in other aspects as well, and because it's set in a kingdom with a king, and J.K. Rowling does what she does best and adds some real meaning into the characters' names and places. So in Harry Potter, she does this by making the characters' names mean what they are. So Sirius Black, he changes into a dog. So his name's Sirius, which is the star constellation. So it's the same in the Ickabog. It's called the Kingdom of Cornucopia. It's the kingdom where it's set, and I think Cornucopia means something like land of plenty, which is very appropriate because it's the place where the best food in the world is made. So all of the towns are named after what they're best for. So the capital is called Shoeville, and of course it makes pastry. And I think there's a place called Kurdsburg, which makes the best cheese, and so on. So it's not just for kids, there's lots in there which appeals to adults, and they can get a smile out of and appreciate how clever her writing is. So, as well as the main towns in Cornucopia, you've also got the north of the country, and this is the marshlands. So in the marshlands, nothing much grows, all the people are really skinny and poor, and the cows and sheep are really skinny. And it's where the legendary creature, the Ickabog, is meant to come from. So nobody in the kingdom really believes in the Ickabog. It's more of a fairy tale, and it's a bit like the Loch Ness Monster really for this story. And it's meant to be as tall as 2 horses with lamp-like eyes, and it's meant to steal like sheep and cows, dogs, children, of course. But it's just the classic fairy tale monster. So what I found really amusing is that the north of the country is the barren area, because it's just what they always do in classic stories. It's the classic story trope of having the north being the barren part, like in Game of Thrones, or Hadrian's Wall. Beyond there is the really barren, barbaric area. And I just find it hilarious because I live near Hadrian's Wall. But it's a classic story trope and it works, so I suppose why change it? So the kingdom's ruled over by a king called Fred the Fearless. Now, he's not fearless at all. He's actually rather vain and clueless. He likes parading around in all his fancy clothes and seeing how well loved he is and that he's the best. But he is pretty clueless. He's got two friends, advisors, who are a bit like Jafar and Aladdin, the very sneaky characters, who try to take over the country and direct his thinking. And he, of course, thinks that they're his best friends. But it's just another classic fairy tale trope where the advisors want to take over and use the king as a bit of a puppet. So I'll try and summarise the story without giving too much away. So basically, in the main city of Shoeville, the king, Fred the Fearless, is holding court when a marshlander comes and pleads for the king's help, saying that he's lost a dog to the Ickabog. Now, the king, of course, along with anyone else in the kingdom, doesn't believe in the Ickabog, but the king sees it as a great opportunity to go and try and boost his reputation, because if he can be seen to have slain this imaginary creature, then everyone will love him even more. So he sets off to the north of the kingdom to slay the Ickabog. But the only problem is, when he gets there, he claims that he does see the Ickabog, and his two trusted advisor friends had to sneaky plan, because they don't believe the king, and they had to plan to try and trick the king and the whole kingdom along with them to believing in this Ickabog. And this is where JK's storytelling really comes into its own, because the advisor's plan slowly gets more and more complicated and is based upon lie, and it really just, it is built on a whole nest of lies. And so the whole story is driven on the fact of, will they succeed in convincing the king and the kingdom, or will they be found out? And it's just a brilliant story, and of course there's lots of twists and turns and a few things that you just wouldn't expect at all. But of course we've got two heroes of the story. In this case we've got Daisy, a little girl whose mum is the baker for the king, and we've got Bert, whose father's one of the guards for the king. And they're friends who end up getting mixed up in the whole business and end up having to try and help save the kingdom. So even though the book's written for children, it's not all nicey nice. It's like Harry Potter in that you can't guarantee the survival of any individual character, except for maybe Harry. But often in the Ickabog, the deaths are just out of the blue and they're brushed over. So it's a bit like the classic Victorian fairy tales, where someone suddenly gets their head chopped off or someone is killed by a wolf. It's a bit like that. And you'd think it was quite shocking for a children's story, but if you look back and think about it, how many of your children's books when you were young actually had somebody die in them? And it's actually quite a lot. And I think it makes this story all the more believable in spite of being a fairy tale, but it's done in a way where it's not gruesome and it's not unsuitable, it's just right for the story. So even though it's a fantasy book, it's actually quite believable, but there are twists and turns, but you know that good's going to triumph in the end. So overall, the Ickabog, I think, is a really good read. It's just a classic children's fairy tale, and if you want something easy to read, which you don't have to think too much about, but you can appreciate clever writing at the same time, it's just a great bedtime read, really, or any time of the day. And I think the children's illustrations really just add that extra something. It shows it was a collaborative effort, and that the kids really enjoyed taking part. So if you do buy it, just let me know what you think of it. You can comment below. Did you think it was too stereotypical? Was there any characters you particularly liked or didn't like? Also, if there's any books you'd like me to review, please let me know and I will look into it for you. So until next time, I will say bye for now.